Hi, and welcome. I'm Dr. Kathy. And whether I was doing surgery in Guatemala, caring for infants, or teaching neonatal exams in Tanzania, caring for burn victims in Niger, teaching healthcare science in Korea, or traveling to Shanghai to learn Chinese medicine, I noticed the same thing worldwide. Patients needed better, healthier food choices. So how was I going to take all of my skills and talents as a doctor and former chef, turn them into one career? That's when I had an idea. I was going to swap one white coat for another. Welcome to The Doctor is In, Cooking with Kathy. Hi, and welcome to The Doctor is In, Cooking with Kathy. I'm Dr. Kathy, the chef. Welcome to your Wednesday edition of my YouTube channel. This one is going to be a decadent dessert. This is something that you're going to eat for very special occasions, and it's not something that you would eat on a regular basis. It is a chocolate mousse cake, and it's going to be luscious and decadent and delicious. Now, I'm trying to teach you how to eat healthier. Not a diet, I hate that word. They're just fads in my opinion. It's a lifestyle change. Learning how to control what goes into your mouth and how you utilize those calories that you consume. Calories in, calories out, proper nutrition, those types of things. That's what I want you to understand. And it's okay to have this dessert every once in a while and only eat one, or maybe it's pretty rich, split it in half. Share it with a friend. That's always a great thing to do. So this is going to be a chocolate mousse, just a straight chocolate mousse, but I'm going to show you how to add some other flavors to it. One of the flavors that I'm thinking about putting into mine is going to be some hazelnut. And you can do that with a spread that's very popular, hazelnut and chocolate, those types of things. So this is what you're going to need. Pretty simple, really straightforward. Some good chocolate. I like to use milk chocolate or semi-sweet chocolate. If you use milk chocolate, you do not need any extra sugar. If you use semi-sweet, you might need a little bit of powdered sugar. I tend not to use it. You're also going to have two different processes of heavy cream, a bowl for whipping, a container to put your mousse into, and a mixer of some sort. Now you've seen me use a stand mixer in the past. That's great, you could use it for this. But I'm going to show you how to do it with just a hand mixer. You could even do it by hand if you want. It takes a little bit of elbow grease and muscle, but it can be done. But most people have a hand mixer and you can do it with that. Also, I have this a biscuit cutter. This is actually a really old biscuit cutter that a friend of mine found, thanks Dee Dee, at a yard sale, and it fits perfectly the size of this particular pan. This is going to be our chocolate cake. This is how we're going to stamp out the size of our chocolate cake. And I'll show you how to do that process a little bit later. So I'm going to put these to the side for now. And also we need some gelatin to stabilize the mousse. Now you can use these. These are gelatin sheets. They're available many different places. Or you can use just a package of unflavored gelatin. I'm going to put this to the side over here, and I am going to use these gelatin sheets. This is the equivalent of one of these packages. I'm going to break this up and I'm going to put it into my larger bowl. This is 1 cup of heavy whipping cream. Yes, it is not a low-calorie dessert by any means, but like I said, it's not something that you want to eat on a regular basis. It's something that you want to eat every once in a while. It's a special dessert, and you can even share. Now I'm going to make sure that the gelatin is completely immersed into my heavy cream. I've got another little piece over here. I want to get that all in there. And I want to let that sit for about 5 to 10 minutes until it softens up. Then I'm going to place this into the microwave and allow it to come to just before the boil, and then I'll add the chocolate. And I have one other ingredient that I'll get as well. So, through the process of editing, come on back and see what that looks like. Welcome back. And no, your eyes are not deceiving you. This mixture of the 1 cup of heavy cream did not turn colors in the microwave. What happened is, when I put it into the microwave and it had just started to boil, I added to it 1/4 cup of a really good Dutch process 100% pure cocoa powder, and let that sit for a minute or so to absorb, and then bring it back up to that just bubble. And that's where it is right now. And I'm going to place this into a large bowl. As you can see, the steam is still coming off of it. And to that, I'm going to add the chocolate chips. I'm just going to cover the chocolate chips in that cream mixture. This is going to be enough heat to melt the chocolate. It's actually almost completely melted right now. I just leave this here for about 2 or 3 minutes, and the mixture is ready to go. I'm also going to let this sit for about 10 minutes to cool off, come to room temperature, and then I can start to whip it. And once I've whipped this about halfway, I'll add that other 1/2 cup of heavy cream, which you don't see here right now. That's because I have it in the refrigerator. I want to keep that as cold as possible until I'm ready to use it. So we're going to let this melt. We're going to let this cool down. So once we come back from editing, you'll be able to see what this looks like, and we will probably notice a few extra things here on my counter, as well as the fact that I'm wearing an apron. I'm wearing an apron because I'm working with chocolate, and sometimes it goes all over the place. Hopefully, the bowl that I have is large enough to keep it contained, but just in case, I'm wearing an apron. And actually, this is an apron I got from a friend of mine. Thanks, Mike. Greatly appreciated. So I'm going to start by giving this a real quick mix. And I don't know if you can see this or not. Look at how nice and thick and beautifully dark this is, and silky. This is just from having it heated in the microwave for just a couple seconds, and then allowing that to heat the chocolate. Okay, so now I'm going to, I also have a glass here that has a pastry bag in it. I've got it open in there, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with that in a minute. I'm just going to take my spatula and put it in here. And then here is my cream that's been sitting, getting nice and cool. And I'm going to mix this until it's about halfway mixed. Now that it's about halfway mixed, I'm going to add the cream and continue to mix. So if you can see how nice and creamy this is, and light, I'm going to mix it for just about another 10 or 15 seconds. That's perfect. Now it's at this stage that I would taste it to see whether or not it needs any sugar. I'm just going to scrape all the edges down. Oh, this is so light and lovely. I'm going to give this a little taste. It does not need any sugar. It is perfect the way it is. I like a little bit of that bitterness to come out when it comes to mousses, because the cake that we're going to use is actually going to be a little bit sweet, so they'll complement each other. Now, if you can see, I've got a couple of other bowls because I'm going to do something else as soon as I am finished with this. So I'm going to take about half of this and put it into my pastry bag that I've got sitting in a cup. The cup holds it. I don't have a friend here to help me, so the cup holds it open for me. And the pastry bag is just going to give me control over how much actually goes into these containers. I'm going to use the rest of this in just a minute or so. give this a nice little cut at the bottom. Okay. Oh. For some reason or other that didn't want to cut very well. And I'm going to take one of my silicone components, give this a real quick squeeze, and I'm just going to fill these with the mousse mixture. And the bag allows me a nice even ability to distribute this throughout my silicone mold. Okay, so this is completely filled. It's pretty close to being even, and I'm going to put this into the freezer and let that firm up. Okay, so that first one's in the freezer, but you can see I've got a second one here, and I still have more mousse. But I've got this mixture. What is this? Well, this is a really nice hazelnut and cocoa mixture. You can buy this in the store, you can make it yourself. This is something that I have made. It's a little bit thick, so I'm going to take some of my mousse and put it in here and give that a real quick mix. This might get a little messy. Okay, I just wanted to lighten that up, so when I put it into my mousse mixture and give it one final real quick mix, it won't be lumpy. Now, because I made this from scratch, the hazelnuts have a little bit of a texture to it, which is okay. It's just going to add a little bit of an extra dimension to this. I'm not going to mix this for too long. I just want to incorporate all of that hazelnut mixture, and then I'm going to give it a real quick taste. There we go. Now, take this all off here, give this a really good scrape down. Mix that up. This is lovely. It's a little bit darker than the other one because you added that beautiful cocoa mixture in there. Give this a little taste. Wow. Hazelnut and cocoa mixture is beautiful. Okay, I'm going to put my mixer to the side. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put this mixture into my pastry bag that I've got the cup holding it up, and pipe that right into my silicone mix. Okay, I've got it in my piping bag. Now I'm going to pipe it into my silicone mold. Okay, these are piped into my silicone mold, and I'm going to put these into the freezer as well. Couple of things. This is just the mold that I chose. You can choose any mold that you want, any shape that you want. I'm going to do something kind of fun and interesting with this, which is why I chose this sort of donut mold. You can use a solid mold. You could use ovals, rounds, spheres, squares, rectangles, anything you want, pyramid shapes. There's lots and lots of different silicone molds out there. You can use whatever you want. The point is, the silicone mold is easy to release, and it freezes really easily. You can also even bake in these, so they're very versatile. I recommend investing in one or two of these. I also have them in different colors. This is going to help me realize and remember which ones were which flavor. The purple one was the plain one, and this neon pink one is my hazelnut. So I'm going to freeze these and then come on back after this edit, and I'm going to show you what they look like when they're frozen. And I'll make that chocolate cake for you, and then we'll put it all together. I'm going to eat some of this. This is so good. Wow. I might just finish this whole bowl. So while we're waiting, I figured I'd take this time to answer a couple of baking questions that I've gotten. Number one, baking is a science. So yes, ratios and measurements matter. The more precise you are with your measurements, the better chance you have of being successful in your baking. Let's see, another question I had was, chocolate. What's some tips you can give me about chocolate? Well, chocolate and water don't like each other. Make sure that when you are You're working with chocolate, your pans are clean and dry. When you're making a mousse, try and have at least some of that cream mixture set to the side, like I did, really cold. Actually, mine was a little bit frozen because cream whips better when it is cold. You don't want to try and whip hot cream. It's not going to be very successful. Don't burn your chocolate. How can I make sure I don't burn my chocolate? Well, like I did. You either put it over a double boiler, that's a pan of boiling water with a bowl on the top, and mix it that way, or you heat up the liquid, in this case it was cream, and put the chips into that, cut up. If it's a brick, make sure you cut that, and let that sit for a few minutes, and it really is enough heat most of the time. The other question was about chocolate was, how do you get chocolate to be nice and shiny and glossy? Well, that's a process called tempering, and tempering is a little tricky. I'm not going to discuss tempering here, but in one of my future episodes, we will be working a little bit with chocolate, and I'll show you tempering. But tempering is bringing chocolate up to a certain temperature, bringing it down to a certain temperature, and bringing it back up to another temperature. And this way, you can get a chocolate that will harden and be that beautifully shiny color. You can also do what we call a mirror glaze, and that's with cream and chocolate and cocoa and a little bit of gelatin in order to give it that really nice, beautiful, glossy shine on top of cakes. Or we're actually going to do a mirror glaze for our mousses that we're making. Let's see, what was some of the other questions? How do you get a chocolate cake not to be really dry? Well, most of the time chocolate cakes require cocoa, and cocoa sucks water up. It really it's so thirsty, shall we say, that any moisture that's in your cake is just going to get sucked up by that cocoa. I solve that in a couple of ways, and I'm going to show you when I make the cake, is I use cocoa and I use melted chocolate. And I use a little bit of extra oil or some other sort of a fat, you'll see my secret in a little bit, to just give that cake a little bit more of a boost so that you have a nice moist chocolate cake as opposed to a chocolate cake that's dry. And a good chocolate cake needs cocoa, so it's really important that you do use it, but understand how it works. Okay, those are some of the questions that I'm going to answer right now. If you have any questions, you can either pop me a message or put it in the comments, and I'll try and address those in a later episode. So come on back after this video magic and editing, and we will put it all together and make a chocolate cake. Okay, welcome back. So what I'm going to make now is a really moist and tasty chocolate cake. Now you can make this gluten-free. I will put those ingredients into the comment section, but this is not gluten-free. This is just a regular chocolate cake. So here I have just a little bit shy of 1 cup of regular flour, and I'm going to add to this half of a cup of really good cocoa powder, and I'm straining this into one of my strainers because I want to make sure that I incorporate all of the cocoa powder evenly. One of the worst things to have is a chocolate cake that has streaks of white through it. So I'm just sifting this in to ensure that it gets incorporated really nicely. And any sort of giant lumps, I don't know if you can see this, but there's some lumps in there and we want to get those out. And then to this, I'm also going to add a teaspoon of baking soda, a teaspoon of baking powder, and half of a teaspoon of salt. Now, some recipes call for equal amounts of baking soda, baking powder, and salt. I think that that's way too much salt, and it just gives it a very unpleasant salinity or salty flavor to it. Now I'm just going to take a spatula and sort of get rid of all of those lumps. Now I'm using a combination of white sugar and brown sugar. And I've got 1/4 cup of brown sugar, and I'm just going to take that and put that to the side. And then 3/4 cup of white sugar. And again, I'm going to strain this through. It's been a particularly humid few days, and I think I might have some lumps in my sugar, and I do not want lumpy sugar in my cake because you're just going to get lumps of sugar throughout your batter, and we don't want that. You can see I've got some lumps in there. A little bit of that is the powder or the brown sugar that I've got. Okay. Very good. And this is just going to make sure that everything's incorporated nicely. Now you're probably thinking at this point in time, how is everything incorporated nicely? I see layers. It's because I'm not quite done yet. And then again, I'm going to take the back of my spatula and just sort of get rid of any of those large lumps. Okay, anything that's left in here I can just put to the side. Now I'm going to take a whisk and I'm just going to whisk this all together because I want to incorporate it the best that I possibly can. I want to see cocoa powder throughout this entire process. Now remember I told you that I'm going to use 2 types of chocolate in here, cocoa powder and some melted chocolate. And where I've got the melted chocolate is in this container that I have some coffee, I have 1 cup of coffee with some melted chocolate. So the coffee was hot, I put the chocolate in here, it melted, and then it's now all cooled off. Now to this coffee mixture, I'm going to add all of my liquids and my brown sugar. So I'm going to take my brown sugar, put it in here, and just let that melt. Brown sugar tends to be clumpy, and I don't want it clumpy and lumpy, so I'm going to melt it in all of my liquid ingredients. So there's my coffee. Now this recipe originally called for buttermilk. Buttermilk is a little heavy, sometimes it's difficult to find, so what I'm going to do is I'm using an almond milk that I put a little bit of acid into to give it that sort of buttermilk flavor. And I'm going to use just a tablespoon of a really good thick yogurt to give it a little bit of that tang that you want from buttermilk. And I have 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. I have a tablespoon of vanilla. Mix that all together. I'm going to use my whisk to mix this all together since I have the yogurt in there. I want to get that all dissolved and mixed nicely. And then I have 1 egg at room temperature. And I'm just going to crack the yolk before I put it into my liquid mixture. Now you notice that I'm doing this by hand, and that's perfectly fine. You can do this by hand. You can use a hand mixer. You can use a stand mixer. I'm just doing it by hand to show you. You don't need any special ingredients. Now before I mix this together, I'm going to show you the pan that I'm going to use. So this is just a 9x9 square pan that I've got some parchment paper on. And I've got some clips holding the parchment paper in place. These clips are going to be fine in the oven, no worries. And then remember that cutter, this is what I'm going to use to cut out all of those rounds for the mousse that I made. Now, this is the process that you don't want to overmix. I'm going to mix my wet ingredients into my dry ingredients. And I want to incorporate this until it is just wet. Now remember what I told you about cocoa. Cocoa tends to absorb all of the flour or all of the liquid around it. It takes a few seconds for it to do that, but you want to make sure that this is a fairly wet mixture because the cocoa powder is really going to suck all of that moisture out, and you want to keep this as moist as possible. There we go. Okay, and again, we don't want to overmix. So the last thing I'm going to do is just scrape down the sides and the bottom to make sure that I have everything incorporated. Oh, This looks so beautiful. Look at the color of this. Can you see? Absolutely delicious. Now I'm going to pour this right into my pan, and I want a nice even layer. This is a half of a recipe. A whole recipe, you just double everything. But when I have my recipes, I like to have it based on the amount of eggs. Okay, now there's going to be some left over here, and I'm going to use that in just a minute. But I just want a thin layer for the cake. It's going to rise, and this is going to be the layer on the bottom of our mousses. And then what I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to put it into another container and serve that for something else a little bit later. This is going to go into a 350-degree Fahrenheit oven for about 8 to 12 minutes. It's a pretty thin layer. And then I'm going to check it for doneness. You can either press in the middle lightly to see if it bounces back. You can stick a toothpick in it to see that the toothpick comes out clean, or you can put a knife in there, whatever way you want to do. I like the bounce back method. I think that works really well for me. So with editing, come on back, we'll see what this looks like, and we'll put the whole thing together. Hi, welcome back for the final assembly of our chocolate cake mousses. I have the chocolate cake already cut out. So what I did was when I took it out of the oven, I let it sit on a cooling rack until it was completely cooled, and then used a cutter, the one that I had showed you that matched this size, to cut them out. Here are my frozen mousses. Here is the glaze that I'm going to put over this, and some decorations. And now I'm going to show you what to do. Okay, the first thing we want to do is we want to pop these frozen mousses out of their silicone. You can see they look like a nice little donut. And I'm just going to place these here and get them all out. Okay, I have them on my rack, and notice I've got a piece of parchment paper underneath, and then I'm going to put one of these pieces of cake on the bottom of each one of them. There we go. Okay, this is a little bit of the tricky bit because this glaze has to be at the right temperature that it's pourable, but not too thick or thin that it won't pour or it pours too much. I'm just going to take a spoon and I'm going to drizzle it all over here, and hopefully it'll go all the way down. So this glaze is a ganache, and what a ganache is just that chocolate and cream mixture that's let to sit a little bit. So this is going to actually look like a glazed chocolate donut. Okay, and we want to do this with each one of them. I'm trying to avoid getting too much in the middle because you can use the middle to serve some beautiful jam inside. And this is what you want to do around each one of them. Very good. Okay. And I'm going to do this to each one, and we'll see what they all look like. Okay, so they've all been glazed. Now here's the thing about the glaze. If for some reason or another you run out of the glaze, sitting it on the parchment paper, you can collect it, warm it up a little bit, and then glaze again. Now I'm going to take some of these sprinkles and just ever so slightly garnish these with some sprinkles. You can do it with whatever you would like. And then I let them sit in the refrigerator for about 10 minutes before I'm ready to serve them. So let me show you how to plate that up. Welcome back, and here they are presented to you. I'm serving these with just some berries on the top and on the side. Now let's give this a taste. So first thing I'm going to get is that beautiful cake and all of that creamy, delicious frosting and that beautiful mousse. The mousse is so light. Going in for a second bite. This isn't necessarily something you'd want to eat the entire bit of. It's very rich, and so I would recommend sharing this with someone. It's a great dessert to share. I hope you give it a try. This is a chocolate mousse served on a chocolate cake with a beautiful mirror glaze. Until next time, thank you very much for watching The Doctor is In, Cooking with Kathy. I'm Dr. Kathy, the chef. Please subscribe to my channel and you'll be updated whenever I have a new video drop. If you have any questions or comments, put them into the comment section and I would be happy to answer any questions, and I appreciate any feedback. So until next time, ciao, and thank you very much for watching.